All film fanatics and culture lovers, it's showtime. Cultures and Communities Fest is coming soon, both virtually and in person, to a movie palace near you. CCF features a full week of candid conversations, moving pictures, and unforgettable events, all focused on holistic health and social wellness. Come celebrate culture with your community this September 6th through the 12th. Go to mkefilm.org/CCF for more information.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Sherry Hansen. I'm a program director at Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee. I'm here with a panel of guests. We're going to be talking about a sense of belonging, exploring sociocultural identity and well-being. So I would like to introduce Lyanna Niekelski. She is with American Family Insurance, Strategic Partners Director. She does a lot of speaking about equity, diversion, and inclusion. And also Alberto Maldonado, Director of the Roberto Hernandez Center at UWM, co-leads and chancellors the Committee for Hispanic Student Initiatives, and Pardeep Singh Kalika, the Executive Director at Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee. Hello, everyone. There you are.
Hello. Hi.
Awesome. Hi, Sherry.
Hello. I had to do my introduction all alone. Great. So let's start by thanking Maureen Post, Director of Strategic Partnerships, Milwaukee Film, Community Engagement Partnership, and Events Manager, for allowing us to be here today. Akila Ingolstad called me and wanted to have us screen a film. And that's how this whole thing got started. And of course, we have to thank Jonathan Jackson, the CEO of Milwaukee Film. But let's start with Lyanna. Would you like to introduce yourself? Please tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me be a part of this conversation. My name is Lyanna Niekelski. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am a community and social impact director with American Family Insurance, but that is only one part of my identity. I'm also a mother. I have 3 children, a partner, a daughter, actually a daughter of an immigrant mother from Ecuador and an American Polish father. And, having grown up in Wisconsin over my whole life, I grew up in 2 very distinct cultures. And when we think about the topic and theme for this conversation around belonging, as a child, I felt like there were many, many, many times where I felt like I didn't belong in either, or, and I had to kind of create my own space. And I know we'll get more into that in the conversation, but it's just, kind of speaking to my upbringing and how that has informed who I am today and the work that I lead today with American Family Insurance around community investment and partnerships in the greater Milwaukee area, building upon my 20 or so years in the nonprofit sector prior. It has really been around fostering relationships and building community and investing in and amplifying solutions that come from our community and really building up leaders who understand the issues intimately, either because they've experienced them themselves or they know people who have, or they themselves are from the communities we serve. And so I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for having me. I'll leave it there and wait till we get into some of the questions for sharing more.
Alberto?
Hi, Sherry. Hi, everyone. Thanks to you and Milwaukee Film for allowing the Roberto Hernandez Center to be part of this event as co-sponsors and to engage in this important conversation. Right? It's not often that we create the spaces to have this type of dialogue. So I'm very pleased that Milwaukee Film is taking the moment and the time to not only celebrate film that has our stories, but also to engage in meaningful dialogue. I, like Lyanna, I'm a bit of a transplant, right? Born in Milwaukee, at the age of 4, moved to the island of Puerto Rico, where my parents are from, and became the son of a coffee grower, and worked in the farm, and then came back to Milwaukee at the age of 19 as an English language learner, first generation college student, navigating UW Milwaukee, who became my safe haven, my home for both my degrees, and the center that opened the doors for me as a returning immigrant to Milwaukee, right? Is the place that I now humbly direct, and I'm able to pay forward what the center did for me back in 1990. And I'm in a great position to really create that sense of belonging that we're going to be talking about today, because I see myself every day in the students that come through the door here at the Roberto Hernandez. And I'm so proud to be part of this long history. Last year we turned 50 as a center here at UWM, and it's super meaningful, right? To be able to do what many did for myself and for so many students coming new into the country, coming new into this community, being first generation, and really trying to find that place where they can thrive here at the university and in the community.
Wow. Those are great introductions. Okay, Pardeep.
Hey, Sherry. Thank you. Big ups to Milwaukee Film. It's great to be on with Lyanna and Alberto, and good to be on with everyone that's out there watching. I kind of was listening more than I was thinking about. Oops, I don't know, Siri's going off. I was listening more than I was thinking about my reply. But as Alberto and Lyanna was kind of talking about their journeys in Milwaukee, resonating with. I was born in India, moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was 6 years old. Grew up in all different parts of the city. I have been in the public service sector for the past 25 years in the capacity of, I've been a police officer in the city of Milwaukee, an educator for a very long time, and then a trauma therapist, and do a lot of work around just curbing hate, and a lot of it looks like de-radicalization work, but it's really about creating healthy societies and cultures, and creating a sense of belonging. And I'm excited about the discussion that we're going to get into. So thank you for having us on.
And I'll say that I went to film school at UWM. Actually, I went to school at UWM for 12 years because I really didn't want it to end. So my degree was in film and photography. And I was really blessed to be a student. I didn't know it at the time. I know it now, of Pat Mellencamp and Cecilia Condit. And they taught me how the lens looks at women. And as a student, again, I didn't really realize the value of how they were helping the students see what was not only being filmed, but reflected back at us. So that's why I'm doubly excited to be here tonight with all of you and have this discussion about really the two worlds that I live in. So, well, I'm curious, in the work that you do, like Lyanna, who are some of the partnerships that you work with, and how is that experience of identity and belonging show up?
Yeah, so American Family Insurance believes that everyone should be free to dream. And we have 5 position statements where we invest and where we form partnerships and where we advance our community and social impact. It's healthy youth development. And so thinking about things like mental health and social emotional wellness, basic needs, like housing and other parts of our environment that impact our health and well-being. And then there's equity in education, in particular literacy and early childhood development and high school graduation, and making sure that some of the basic things and outcomes are met for academic success, recognizing that if some of those mental health and social emotional things aren't met, you won't get the academic success and achievement. There's also climate resilience. So that's our environmental sustainability work, and just focusing on the greater environment that sustains us all and making sure that we are good stewards of our earth. And economic opportunity. So economic opportunity in particular as it relates to how we can help individuals build wealth, either through workforce, skilling up, entrepreneurial pathways, and in particular focusing on justice-involved individuals so we can reduce mass incarceration and recidivism and ensure that our communities in particular, our BIPOC, our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities are the primary beneficiaries of these investments. So the fifth area to that point is our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensuring that that's at the center of all of those 4 areas of investment. And it relates to your question, Sherry, around how do these partnerships and that sense of belonging, like how does that relate to our work? Well, when we center diversity, equity, inclusion, we're thinking about it at all levels of decision making, from who are the leaders that are leading the work? Where is this work based? What are the solutions that individuals who are, like I had mentioned earlier, experiencing that the impacts of the inequities firsthand, Black leaders, brown leaders, women leaders, what solutions have they come up with, and how can we amplify, invest in, and elevate their work, to see it succeed? And so with belonging, we know that if you have a business, for example, that it was founded by a BIPOC leader, they are more likely to hire BIPOC employees and focus on recruitment within those natural networks. And so we think there can also be this ecosystem effect. And, that's our external work. Internally, around fostering an inclusive environment also allows for psychological safety and belonging. So all of our people that are either in my area of work in community social impact or on the insurance side of the business, which is also a critical component when you think about the safety net that provides for people, can reach their full potential as employees, and having that sense of belonging. So I think it's a thread that runs through all of our work, both internally, how we show up as employees and team members, how we treat each other, so we can each be our best version of ourselves every day and not have to worry about the microaggressions or the discrimination that exists as part of this system that we're a part of, to then be able to do our work really well out in community.
Feels like these types of jobs are a recent phenomenon, and that's only to me because I haven't worked for an organization. The diversity, inclusion, equity, is that something that is relatively in organizations, companies?
Yeah, I can answer that pretty quickly, because I also want to hear from Pardeep and Alberto too, and their experiences. From the corporate sector, corporate social responsibility isn't entirely a new phenomenon. I think in the 60s and 70s, it was really centered more on climate control and climate change and the environment. And then diversity and inclusion type work, kind of came a little after. But it was always, I think, limited to kind of PR type roles. Like it's kind of like a good thing to do, but not necessarily part of business strategy. And I think we have seen changes in more recent years in how community and social impact work, diversity and inclusion, environmental sustainability are really, there have been proven reports and research that demonstrates how it's impacting bottom line. And so, with American Family Insurance at an enterprise level, there are 13,000 employees across country. We have 3 goals that are part of our enterprise strategy. One's a profitability goal, the other is a growth goal, and then we have a people goal. And the people goal is very intentional on diversity and ensuring that we have diverse representation across the board, and as well as our leadership level. So we actually have a target that we are aiming to achieve, and paired with that, of course, is ensuring that it's inclusive. So it's not just about the numbers and reaching quotas. That's not that at all. But if we get that people goal right, then the other 2 will follow. And so I think corporations are realizing just the power of people. And at the end of the day, it's people who are leading teams, people who are driving the strategies, creating the strategies to be competitive. When you look at the census data that just came out, in the last, recent weeks, our country is shifting dramatically in terms of demographics. And soon there will be no minority, we're really going to be very diverse as a nation. And it'll be important that there's representation at all levels, in all sectors, in all areas, film, university, government, corporations. And so, but to your question, that's one half of it. I think also with most recent visibility of events like the murder of George Floyd, it's also really woke people up who weren't paying attention before. And so, I'm hoping that there's something positive that can come out of the tragedy that we've experienced.
I don't know where I heard this, but revolution, involution, and evolution. It's, it's what's kind of happening. So, Alberto, can you answer that question as well?
Yeah, I think, for us, it's something that we realized we were doing for quite some time, and we just weren't using the proper title for our division. But it's interesting that like Lyanna said, I think there's a magnifying glass that has been placed now on not only the work that we're currently doing, but we also putting the magnifying glass on areas that we ought to be doing better, right? And where we can engage not only one sector of the campus, right? I'm part of the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Prior to that, our name was the Division of Global Inclusion and Engagement. And so it forced us who are doing the equity and inclusion work to be even more intentional and say, you know what, this is the work that we've been doing for some time, and we should call it for what it is. We're at the ground level doing it, and what else can we do to enhance the work? What else can we do to include voices and individuals on our campus that ought to be, really held accountable for what's not happening in those areas? And so, very, very exciting to be part of that evolution and that process of identifying what we're doing well, but also identifying the areas where we can do better, and be part of different tables and meetings and conversations that perhaps before folks were not including those of us who can really educate folks about ways to go about it, or educate folks about things that are happening in the community, how we can connect community with campus, community with individuals. How can we expose, and really provide students who aren't comfortable with these conversations and putting them in situations where they now can learn, right? So it's been, to answer your question, it's been something that me in the division that I'm part of, we've been doing for some time. I think we now have to call it for what it is and really bring others along and really open up those conversations to do more work on anti-racist education, to talk about, inclusion, hiring practices, really elevating the work of those faculty and staff that for a long time have been doing the work, but they sort of weren't given those opportunities to shine, right? And to share their work with others. And so it's really exciting times for us here on campus, for me as a center with my colleagues from the Black Student Cultural Center, the Native American communities and the Southeast Asian communities, to really, be brought into, conversations and spaces that perhaps we hadn't been before. And so, and it's exciting because it's involving not only one sector or campus, but it's involving leadership. Leadership. It has called us upon as an entire campus to engage in these practices and engage in and conversations that would allow for growth in those areas. I think you're muted, Sherry.
Yeah, it said the host was muted me, but anyway, Pardeep, take it away. Now Pardeep's muted.
Oh, I am.
I think we're just having a little technical difficulties.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't mind, Pardeep, starting over.
Sure. And I think just earlier on, you were talking about just film, and I was kind of smiling because sometimes this work, the sort of the EDI, DEI work, you said something to the effect of what is being filmed and what is being reflected, what is being done, and what is being seen, and what is being understood, or what is being felt. And I think that this is, obviously we know that this is very much heart-centered work, and the reflection of systems change has to be, and I think that we kind of talked about it, has to be deliberate, because if it's not, I don't know if it's truly going to happen. And so all of these systems, when we think about it, I think a lot about the mental health system, just because we work in that space, and knowing the history of it, knowing, kind of where and mental health has really been a phenomenon that has sort of evolved in the past, I would say really like the past 40, 50 years, to understanding and diagnosing, now developing a bit more of a trauma-informed sort of approach to treatment. And when that word started to become big within mental health circles, we got to understand that before that, we were very much in a diagnosis model. We were saying to people, here's what's wrong with you. Here are the things that are, and then really treating people with lots of, and meditating in a culture of judgment. And I don't know if that's just a mental health model, a lot of society. That's a lot of just the way that we have meditated is really to judge someone, not to understand someone. And now we're getting to a place where we understand, and now as we go forward, what does that reflection look like within different modalities and systems? So I think we all need to kind of understand, when we understand mental health, we understand mental health from an integrated approach, meaning that it has to be incorporated. Not everybody has to be a clinician, but it does need to be incorporated into all parts of a person's life. So that means, the educational system, that means their workplace, that means all of those places, to say, how is this showing up, and how do I understand people rather than judge them?
Before we started and went live, Alberto, you were talking about your childhood and kind of the full circle story of how you ended up coming to UWM. Can you share that with us?
Oh, geez. Where do I begin?
It was interesting. So.
No, it is, because I grew up in the River West community, not too far from campus, and I came back full circle, right? There's historically been a predominantly Puerto Rican community in River West, and after 15 years of living in Puerto Rico, and really living a very simple rural life in the mountains of Puerto Rico, to come to the largest city in the state of Wisconsin, and really having to relearn the language, having to navigate the different systems, and finding myself in a place where now I was part of a community in a city that was segmented in so many ways, right? And Puerto Rico is just a Puerto Rican. In Milwaukee, I am now you need to live in the South Side because you're Latino, and you have to shop in these places, and you have to mingle with these folks. And that to me was an eye opener and a process for me to really find my community and to really integrate myself to that process. Coming from a very small island to here, and then just walking in the footsteps of people who have done so many great things. Latinx activism in Milwaukee has a long history of many champions, women, elders, people who really fought hard for equity, and the rights of migrant workers and things like that. So, here I am trying to learn all that history, trying to find my community, trying to find my identity within that ecosystems of a very segregated city, and coming to UWM and really navigating that process, learning the language as I am, failing and doing well in other classes, and really sort of finding those roots that sort of catapult me to where I am now. I received both my degrees from UWM, was helped by so many mentors in my community here on campus, and yeah, I always tell the story. If somebody would have told me at age 18, 19, when I arrived in Milwaukee, that I was going to be the assistant director of admissions for the second largest institution here in the state, or the director of the center that sort of helped me and guided me, I would have laughed and probably run away, being scared and whatnot. But it's life that puts you in those situations, and it's coupled with like I said before, great mentors, great people, and people that believe that you like themselves can do it, and that's what I find myself today, is for representing over 2,600 Latinx students at UWM and growing, and really creating possibilities for them. I'm so glad that Lyanna is among us today, because American Family, walks the talk. You folks are helping us as well with our efforts to increase resources for Latinx students at UWM, and for LGBT students, and for so many other communities. And so it is through those partnerships, it is through the work that we do in the community, it's through the faculty and staff that supports the work that we do here at the center that I arrive, right? So I'm one of those good stories, if you can call it that way, that is trying to create, multiply those good stories that we will see in the future, and that we're seeing currently today.
So Lyanna, you said you had worked for nonprofits before you got to American Family. I would be curious to know what type of work you were doing, or even if you wanted to talk about, your youth and your sense of belonging in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you ask kind of those two questions, because it's related. So I shared my mother's from Ecuador, South America, and growing up in Wisconsin, Madison, really, there were not a lot of Latinos in Madison. And if there were, they were Puerto Rican or Mexican. And so even in our Hispanic, Latino community in Madison, I didn't feel like I belonged, because people would say, "Where are you from?" Ecuador, or, "Where's that?" Or if they were American, "Where in Mexico is that?" And it's like, and there was not the internet. I'm 41. I don't mind sharing age. This was the 80s, and there was, you just had National Geographic or whatever you would learn on TV and the Discovery Channel. So people had no idea, about geography. So fast forward to my first trip to Ecuador at 12 is really my first exposure also to my culture, and where I finally realized where I belong. and gained confidence in my identity and really started to embrace it. You know, my whole childhood, I was embarrassed to speak Spanish because my friends in school didn't speak Spanish, you know, and I only spoke with my mom's relatives when I had to. And so I really that experience really flipped it for me. And so it was the exposure, it was the deeper understanding, you know, and not to discredit any of the learnings that my mother and father imparted on me, because my father is also bilingual and they're very proud of our culture. It's just, you know, you're as a child and even as an adult, you get influenced by your surroundings and by what people around you, you know, how they perceive you. And so I had always been perceived as an other, an ambiguous ethnicity, you know. So it was that experience that also exposed me to deep poverty. You know, my mother comes from very humble beginnings. You know, Alberto, you speak about in rural, I can picture it. I've been to Puerto Rico, you know, and Ecuador, and it's so different. It's, you know, there might be some places in the South in the US that resemble some of those rural communities, but my mother also one of, you know, 9 children, single mother, Guayaquil, which is a, you know, 7-8 million population city. Very humble upbringing, and I was exposed to deep poverty that her family experienced and what she experienced. And I had these questions: why a country so rich in resources so poor? Like, what is happening in this world where we are allowing children to be begging for food on the side of the street? And so at a young age, I committed myself and knew that whatever I did, I wanted to make sure that I was helping make the world a better place for all of us. And that I really believe at the core, like all of us human beings, we just want love, we want respect, and we just want to be happy, you know, and to have the freedom to do that and to reach our full potential. And so, you know, fast forward to UW-Madison, where I think I'd shared, I don't know if I was in the pre-meeting or in here, I was originally an engineering student. I liked math. And everyone was like, oh, math, woman, Latina, do engineering. And I was in the program and again, didn't really felt like I belonged. So I actually switched. And I also wanted to work in community. And I didn't see jobs like that in the corporate sector back then in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I went into nonprofit work. I ended up with an economics degree. And I thought I would go abroad to do work internationally, to go back to Ecuador, to do international development. But I got an internship here in Milwaukee with Growing Power. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with Growing Power. It's community food center. It was founded and led by one of the state's few African-American farmers, Will Allen. And at that time in 2003, it was pretty small and still kind of burgeoning. And I saw this vision and I loved the work. It was connected to, you know, health and wellness, land stewardship, self-resiliency, self-sustainability, building community. And I loved that it was in community. It was fit right there on 55th and Silver Spring Drive on the northwest side. So one summer turned into about 10 years with Growing Power. I did take about 2 years off to do some traveling. I did go back to Ecuador and then came back and was at 16th Street Community Health Center for a little bit before going back to Growing Power. But then I realized from then I started in the field and ended in fundraising, which opened other doors for me, right? So it was about 10 years with Growing Power and that whole community food system work. And I went to work for a school for a few years in fund development, the Hispanic Chamber for a little bit of time before ending at the Greater Milwaukee Committee. And that was over about a 20-year period before American Family about 3 years ago. So, you know, the nonprofit experience has ranged from education, business development, community development, both on a very grassroots level, but then also more broadly through some of the work with the Greater Milwaukee Committee. And so it's been awesome. And it has also given me a lot of exposure to others in the community, but I realized there's still so much more happening. And, you know, I'm looking at you, Pardeep, and I'm like, how come we've never met before this panel? And so I realized, and I love that there's just more and more popping up. And I think it's through events like this where, you know, you're convening folks, where we can, you know, just amplify each other's work and really work towards systems change. It's what attracted me to switch into the corporate sector was, you know, realizing that it can't be all up to government and all up to nonprofit to work on social issues. Corporations really need to change our whole economic system and ensure that we are putting people and our planet, if not first, just as equally important as profit.
Pardeep, did you want to comment on talking about your past history? What led you? I mean, I know, but what led you to Interfaith Conference?
Yeah, and Lyanna, I don't think we met because I'm not that popular in town. You know, I'm not known. I'm just kidding. Um, but yeah, I think just when I think about faith and the world that we sort of navigate within faith and faith inclusion, it is one of those things that's less maybe known about somebody's personhood and their being. And I think that what we're discovering is that it's something that lots of communities cannot put away as part of their being, as part of what they bring. And so with the Afghanistan crisis that's happening, in 2 days we'll be celebrating. Well, I don't know about celebrating, but we'll be reflecting on 20 years since 9/11 and what that experience meant to so many different communities. And again, just as Alberto and Lyanna were speaking, I was kind of reflecting on that sense of belonging, and really how sometimes we are conditioned into this, and I would say society and the external society and us, we're sort of we accept this conditional love, and not the same, not that we intend, nobody intentionally does it, but somehow, some way, we become who we are because we're always fighting to be genuinely loved. And I think that part of that battle is obviously outside of ourselves. It's in the systems. It's in the country. It's in seeing role models. It's in I think about role models all the time, and I'm like, my children barely have any role models that we can see and say, well, you can identify with this person. She's your shiro, and that's your hero, and that's, well, not to be like sort of cisgender about it, but like who like, we almost have to be accommodating to even our kids who don't see role models, who look or talk or walk in spaces like them. And I think part of like my existence has been like, forget it. I don't see them, so I'm going to become them.
Mm.
I have to do it. And I think that part of all, yeah. No,
I'm like, yes.
thank you. And I think Sherry knows as much as I like. I would love to take a break and rest, but I know that there's other kids who are, just first or second generation immigrants who, again, they don't know who to look up to, who to like role model. And so I think that we need more and more of that, that's done. And I don't, again, I think part of that is like, I want to tell my kids that you are genuinely loved. You don't have to be, and the sooner that they can understand that. And I think that part of the trauma is really is that there's so many children in this city that feel like they're conditionally loved. They need to do this so that they'll be loved. And yes, that's what makes us, that's what makes, BIPOC communities strong, but it also is exhausting. And so we have to I think that we have to understand all those dynamics are there. But I think part of the balance of that is like why I do the work that I do, is that just to find a deeper sense of sort of being and fulfillment and happiness and joy. And as we think about, joy in this time and place that we are in, I think it really is almost even an act of resistance of like,
Mhm.
how do you dare be joyful during this time?
Mhm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I think Sherry went on and on and started preaching on that one, but
How deep you literally just got real deep with us.
Yeah.
my apologies.
No, I love it.
I couldn't help but to think of my parents as you are, talking about role modeling and heroes and sheroes. And oh my God, I look at my parents and sort of retrospective, and I'm so blessed to have them. They're still alive, right? 79, 75, live in the same house in River West for 32 years. But my goodness, they could have been CEOs. They could have been mathematicians, because I often think and talk to my three boys about how they did it. I mean, they left school in 8th grade. to work in the farms and manufacturing. And, I look at myself, and I look at, in the society that we live, where, we're so tasked with so many things, and we're always trying to find ways to make a dollar here and there. And they did it so, in my eyes, so easily, right? Without letting us know that they were struggling, or that they were, trying to make a better world for me and my siblings. And it's like, those were my heroes. The work ethics that I carry today, it comes from them. There's no way around it. I mean, yes, I had mentors. Yes, I had great people that believed in me, but they were the pioneers of they were the ones who planted those seeds from the get-go. And we don't often talk about that, right? About those individuals, and they made me believe that I could do it in their own ways, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see the next generation. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, and you can see that level of just compassion for the earth and the world, and
Mhm.
and then they're doing things and they're imagining things that maybe, and I think about leadership and leadership. I think about just how we pass on the baton of like, let's really hurry up and do it, and let's really like nurture these kids to not that they have to solve the world's problems, but they innately represent this newness that is like,
Mhm.
and this generational. So no, I think back about our parents too, like Alberto and Lyanna and Sherry. You all know that like we didn't always get along with our parents. We always did, like it was tough, like navigating these different households. But I think that the one thing that we saw from them was sacrifice, hard work, right? And then how could we not sacrifice and work the same, work just as hard as they are to like do the same for the next generation.
Mhm. You know, when you talk about the next generation, and when I'm thinking also about this common thread of belonging, and how belonging and unconditional love, I think what you're getting at, Pardeep, like helps us really reach our full potential. And I think about this younger generation and just how they approach inclusivity, whether it's from the different gender identities, the different sexual identities, and how fluid and comfortable they are with each other's fluidity in that space. Like I consider myself a pretty open-minded person, but I even like, it's like, I have to be very thoughtful and very intentional, and like with my own kids, they're 11, 12, and 15. And I recently, my 12-year-old came to me, this is my daughter, and she goes, I really identify as they, them. Can you start referring to me that way? And I'm like, well, why? Like, do I have to? Like, you're my daughter in my mind, but at the same time, it's like, no, I'm going to take a step back and really try to understand why it's important. What does it mean? How does it help her feel comfortable and confident in being who she wants to be in this world? And like, is it really that important to me? Like, should I care that much if she's if she's referred to as a she, her, or a they, them, or and yes, it does matter. She cares, or they care. That's what matters. Is they say there's the golden rule, or treat people how you want to be treated, and it's like, no, the platinum rule is like, no, treat people how they want to be treated. And I think that with the younger generations, we see even a deeper level of understanding of an appreciation and respect for each other because of all that like diversity. I love it. I think there's a lot we can learn, a lot we can pass on, but a lot we can learn, because our journey certainly isn't over. To your point, Pardeep, we still have our own work to complete.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many ways to honor and celebrate the way that spirit incarnates itself.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple years ago at our annual luncheon, we used the word coexist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think beyond coexist, beyond diversity and inclusion, where's acceptance and celebration?
Mm-hmm.
It's time. Yeah, listening to all of you, it's really inspiring. I feel like change is afoot. and this next generation. There's a lot of hope as well. Well,
And go ahead.
oh, please, Alberto.
No, I'm just thinking all the stories that we're yet to see on screen, because I think what we're seeing is a revolution of stories, great stories that weren't told for many years, and that we were just limited in our ability to to speak and to see ourselves in screen, and to have our own heroes, and to have to relate and to be joyful when we see those stories, and cry when we see ourselves that I'm excited because my son is a film major here at UWM, and I could not wait to see his work, because it's going to be amazing, right? He's gonna have a different perspective on things, and he's going to be able to have the level of impact that perhaps some of our generations didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Marielle just mentioned a film in the children's program called Joy Child, which is referring to what Lyanna was just talking about. And I would also recommend seeing 9 to 5. That's an incredible film, part of this Cultures and Creatives Festival as well.
Yeah, I'll throw in, I know we weren't going to go too deep on the films, but I know AmFam is sponsoring The Fight, and really highlighting some of these unsung heroes advancing social change. Alberto, you're talking about so many stories that are coming out, and like stories that we don't hear about and don't know about. But the beauty of films like The Fight is, like, once you do hear about it, it's inspiring. You're like, oh, wow, this person did that, and they came from this background, and it's like, oh, I can do that too. It's like, it's the representation that's so played out, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but you hear representation matters, but it's like so true. And Pardeep, you might be the trailblazer, like you didn't see those heroes out there, and hopefully there will be another 5, 10, of views, now that you're here. And so I think that is just another, benefit of the importance of film, and highlighting these stories, and just again to amplify and accelerate and grow the movement.
I've noticed that there were 17 in the Sin. I'm probably not saying it as well as you guys. Sin Fronteras. There were 17 films.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I read an article about Bianca Fuster, Latina artist who is now a senior producer, has her own production company called Lyanna Niekelski. She's her first major project called The Warrior Princess. So that's pretty exciting as well.
That's awesome.
She's one of our good stories. I know Bianca very well. She's an alum, and I've seen her growth through the years, and yeah, I'm so excited for her.
Because getting a film off the ground, especially an independent one, it's miraculous. We tell stories to each other. We tell stories in presentations, but telling that story that you have to put on screen, there's just a lot of, it's a mountain to climb. So,
Sherry, we just did a film, and I think I'll show you. It's an interfaith talk between a Muslim clergy member at Northwestern around trauma and childhood trauma. And I haven't shown it to you yet, but it's because it's not been released. But I was like, you just made me think of it. But she's brilliant. This clergy, she's just amazing the way that she interacts with children, and children with just severe trauma histories.
And also Mission Joy, the film with the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu was really wonderful as well. This class. So. Well, anything else?
No, thank you for moderating today, Sherry. You're amazing, and then it was great to have a conversation with Lyanna and Alberto. Thank you all.
Really nice to meet all of you. And many thanks to Milwaukee Film again, Maureen, Akila, for allowing this to happen. Is it okay if I read a quote before we go?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I got to put my inspectors on. So, this was at the end of the film Mission Joy. And I just thought it was so perfect for our gathering. At the fundamental level, every human being is exactly the same, vulnerable to pain, fear, and unhappiness, aspiring to be happy, to seek connection, to find meaning, and to find love. There is no difference. It doesn't matter where you come from. That is the fundamental condition, compassion, speaking to the reality of the God. Amen.
Amen.
And peace as well.
Thanks.
Peace
It's
to
good
you
to-
too.
Good
Thank
to see
you.
everyone.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.